Hello and welcome to another episode of Tips and Ideas with Ed Wallace of Midwest Landscaping, www.uniqueenvironments.com. We're here in Orange, California, reviewing a job site where we're going to do a quote for landscape renovation through the Metropolitan Water District of Orange County rebate program. And so I had to come over to the job site and just take a look at it and evaluate what we're going to need to do so we can become familiar with the job site. One of the first things that I check out is the irrigation system, because we need to retrofit the existing irrigation over to a drip system. And we have a front lawn that has a mixture of St. Augustine, fescue, and whoever knows what else, dandelions or whatever else in this front yard here. So this grass is going to come out, the different shrubs are going to come out, and we're going to replace it with some drought tolerant and California native or water conserving plant material. But getting back to the irrigation, one thing I noticed when I came up to the job site is that here is our main coming in off of the street into the house. And if you notice, we only have one ball valve, which is cool, but that ball valve is above, I think this pipe right here is a supply pipe for the irrigation system. So that irrigation system, unless there's a ball valve up near the valves, there is no independent ball valve to shut off those valves if you have to do any kind of work on the valves. And this ball valve here is to shut off the water going into the house. But as you can see, the supply line coming up from the street, it elbows off and it goes into the side, which goes down this way. And here is our valves here. They're located right here in the front. So these are our valves set up, and we have 4 valves. And the wiring and stuff is all, some of it's not hooked up, some of it's hooked up and it's missing. Some valves are not hooked up, so that has to be evaluated out. But one thing I noticed about these valves, this particular valve is leaking. So that means that either the actuator or the seal around the valve, the actuator, actually not the actuator, the solenoid. It looks like the solenoid is no good. It's an old solenoid, there's a crack in it. So this solenoid is probably leaking from being twisted on and off, because that's the only way that the system has been working. From talking with one of the residents here, is that they've been operating the system by twisting this actuator, which basically releases the pressure and activates the valve so the water can come on. So by going back and forth all the time using that actuator, which is not a great idea in order to turn the system on, it's wore out the gasket. There's a gasket that's located in here. And so when you continually go back and forth, especially on this type of actuator or this type of valve, you wear out that gasket, and this is what you get: water wastage and water dripping. Actually, this is what you need right here, and if you're going to do that, is this little lever so you can turn it on and off. But better still, you need to be able to have these wires hooked up so that it can operate correctly like it's supposed to, and not come out and do this situation where you turn them on manually by hand by twisting the solenoid. As you can see, the solenoid is pretty old. See, it's cracked right here. So these solenoids and these valves are very old. This looks like it's been replaced. It's fairly new looking, just like this one. Both of these have this handle here. So I'm anticipating these 2 valves were probably replaced. At least the solenoids were replaced, or the valves, just like the valves may have been replaced not long ago. But this is another old solenoid. You can see the crack in there. So it's leaking. And when you have a solenoid that's leaking like that, but the thing about it, we don't have an independent ball valve. So we've got to put an independent ball valve in there to shut the water off. So even if you wanted to fix that valve that has the dripping water, we'd have to shut the water off out here at the street, because we can't take the actuator out in order to replace it or repair it unless we have the water turned off. So we have to come out here to the street, and this is the meter. This is your meter to the house that has the water goes into the house. And one thing that I noticed when I got down here is this little dial here, this little star dial. That little dial there basically calculates, it shows you if there's water movement in the house, the little star. And that little star is barely moving, but it is moving. So that means there's water wastage. And I'm anticipating that little bit of movement is from that leak up here where the valves are located. So by measuring this number here, I know that when I first looked at that, it was at 0.5, and someone said 0.6. And so based on that usage, there's a lot of gallons of water that's being wasted on a daily basis here because of that one leak. And that little star is moving around really slow. But that tells you if it's a leak somewhere within the house, or there's there's water being turned on or something like that, like a hose bib or a faucet or something inside the house. That little star will move around quite rapidly. But right now it's barely moving, so that just shows me that there is some water movement going into the house, which I anticipate is that valve up there that I just showed you. So I had to point this out to the homeowner so that he can be able to get this thing fixed as soon as possible, because he's trying to save water, but a lot of water is being wasted through that valve at the moment right now. And without that independent wall valve, because right now we don't really need too much water at all on this landscape, since it's going to come out anyway, plus it rained a couple of days ago, we don't really need to have the water on at this point here for this front lawn here. So I'll let the client know about that. But I just wanted to point out some things I had to look at when we're looking at doing a landscape makeover. There's a mixture of grasses here. You have this kikuyu grass. This stuff is notorious. As you can see, it just goes with tendrils, and each time if you break one of these tendrils off, you see the rooting. See the roots on that, the rhizomes, that'll take off and it'll just root itself back up again. So this is some people, I think they call it devil grass, but it has a mean root system, you see. So each one of those nodules can be an independent growing ground. It's pretty tough. It's pretty stiff stuff. So we have that growing in here. You have St. Augustine, you have clover, you have dandelions, you have dichondra. That looks like dichondra in there. So you have a whole mixture of all kinds of stuff growing in here. But this stuff right here is the worst, because you have to eradicate it and be able to take care of this in order to get something going here. Or we have to cut down really deep. This time of the year is going into dormancy. So that means that we won't really get a really good kill. If we put a herbicide on it, we'll get a top kill, but not a really good thorough kill, because a lot of these grasses, they go into a state of dormancy, so they're not going to take in the moisture into its system down to the root system and kill it from the root up. So eventually the client will have some of this kikuyu grass and some Bermuda that probably will come up. The spring is ahead in the springtime and when it gets warmer, because it's a warm season grass. And especially along here along the sidewalks, they'll have grasses that'll come out from underneath, because the roots have surfaced underneath the sidewalk, and they'll spring their head on the corners and edges of the sidewalk and also along the driveway there, because the roots are all up under this sidewalk here. So even though we do as best kill as we can in eradicating this old grass and kikuyu and whatever else is here, it's going to be a challenge, because those roots are very deeply rooted. Anyway, this is what we got, and we're going to work with getting something done here. I'll point out the things that need to be pointed out to the client, and we'll move from there. Ed Wallace.